Oh, hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode at the Warehouse Underground podcast series. This is episode number 11. And joining me today is the one and only, the real Mike Meyers, who is the founder and CEO at Lully, which offers effortless warehouse optimization. Now, if you are on LinkedIn a lot, like I am, and you are in the warehouse and distribution center circles, you have probably heard from him many times. He offers a lot of great insight into the world of how to optimize your operation, not necessarily from the leadership side or from the management side, but inside the software, inside the WMS. And that is very valuable because there's many opinions about out there, depending on who you ask, about the best way to do all sorts of things that happen inside the WMS in a warehouse. But Mike is a fantastic asset and a fantastic resource for people because he is very knowledgeable about this, and now has created his own company that really helps people do the same. So I'm excited to have him on. I'm gonna bring him on the show here onto the stage. Mike, good morning, my
Hey,
friend.
good
How are
morning.
you today? And thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Excited to chat with you a little bit.
Yeah, same. So we, like a lot of the guests that I have on my show, we have been following each other on LinkedIn a lot. Like we've seen each other's posts and commented on each other's posts. But I want to set the stage here right away. At the Warehouse Underground, you don't have to worry about your P's and Q's, right? There's no filtering of anything here. I want this to be a very gritty, raw conversation because that's the type of audience we have. So I just want to set the standard, set the stage
Yeah,
with that. Are you okay with that? Are you comfortable with that?
that's my happy place. I'm totally comfortable there.
Good. Yeah, I thought it'd make everybody feel comfortable. All right, so real quick, I gave a little bit of an introduction about you, but in your own words, like just tell the audience a little bit about your background and kind of how you came to create Lully and what it's all about.
Yeah. So I've been in and around the warehousing world for about a decade now. I started off as what you can think of as a process engineer or continuous improvement engineer in a facility. Um, and it kind of was really lucky. My very first toe dipping, if you will, was a big labor management implementation. If you've ever done
Nice.
uh, labor management deployment, as a system, you tend to get this really deep understanding of how the WMS actually functions. Because how it functions, how it records data, the buttons that you're pressing, all those translate to labor management measures, if that's the right way to say it. So you get this really deep understanding. And that kind of set me down this path of wanting to be able to pull on levers within systems to get to some operational output, and
Mm.
really enjoyed doing that. Right. So really enjoyed just getting into an operation, understanding the tools that were available, and then how do you just squeeze them to get the whatever that outcome is. Not not particularly focused in any one area, but just, hey, where operationally are we having troubles, and how do we use systems to drive change?
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And now I know that, and I've heard you talk about this before, and I want to mention it just because I think it's really neat and telling about
Hmm.
what you're doing with Lully. The name Lully was conductor, correct?
You got it. Yeah.
Yes.
John Batiste Lully.
Yes, and so that's the whole, as I kinda digested it, it seems like that's the whole vibe that you're going for, that he's conductor and that Lully is looking at what's happening inside of a WMS, where there's all these different layers, all these different
Mhm.
parts, and by themselves, they're not great, but when you combine them all together, just like an orchestra, they all work together to form something, but it's the conductor that's making that happen. Is that what
Make,
you're going for with that? I don't wanna steal, like, your brand or
yeah.
anything. I
No,
just thought
that's
that was
beautiful.
really neat. Yeah, as
Yeah, that's
somebody
absolutely
who creates
beautiful.
content. Yeah, I
So
like that.
I think you nailed it. So the way that You think about Lully is as an orchestrator, right?
Yeah.
And that's really the long-term vision. That's not how we think about it today per se, but it's the long-term vision. But if you break down what it would take to become a good orchestra, it's really all the engines, all the micro engines. How do you get them running really effectively? And how do you have
Hmm.
leaders of said engines so that you can make decisions between them? So take picking and replenishment as a simple example, right? There's a thought process to how you just get more out of picking, and there's a thought process to how you get more out of replen. But if you don't think about them in conjunction with each other and have an understanding of what's happening within both of those kind of microsystems, orchestrating it's not really feasible, right? So we're
Yeah.
with that decision engine for picking. That's where we exist today. But it will morph over time to become more holistic across the facility.
I see. Now, one of the things, and we talked about this a little bit before coming on the show, and we both have strong opinions about this. I know you do, and I've been in the industry on the ops side for
Mhm.
a long time, and I've encountered a lot of different people who have a lot of different theories, and there's a lot of in the world of warehousing and distribution. It seems like there are many commonly held beliefs that when people really start to peel back the onion, they find out that they're just not true.
Mhm.
So in your walk, in your experience, what are
Mhm.
some of those commonly held beliefs that people have, operators have, that you just think, man, if you really slice and dice it, if you really look at this deeper, it's just not true, right? It's a
Yeah.
myth.
Yeah. There's two that I think are my absolute favorites. So one is slotting. And before we dig into
Oh,
that one deeper, the other one is waving, waving size specifically. So there's this thought process of, and you see it everywhere, but folks wanting to make these massive jumbo waves in an attempt to gain efficiency, right?
yeah.
And depending on the operation, depending on the flow, depending on the amount of mechanization, that could be making you slightly worse, or it could be making you a whole lot worse, depending on the environment. So the go-to reaction is, I'm going to make this massive wave. I'm going to pick up all these benefits, and in reality, I've never seen it play out that way. Strategic wave sizing, being very uh, curated, if you will, in how you build the waves, how you release them, that whole control mechanism is where the value actually lies. So I think, a lot of folks get into this mindset of just pull the ripcord, get as big of a wave out there as possible, and expects magic on the backside. And it just doesn't typically come true. On the slotting side, this is one of those
Oh.
deals where my online persona may not match reality, right? But if you think about
They say that
slotting,
about
what
me too. They say that about me
yeah,
too, by the way.
yeah. So slotting's this art and science of figuring out where items should be in the building, right? And
Yep.
I'm specifically thinking about slotting for forward pick locations, not necessarily put away logic. But when you think about slotting for forward pick locations, there's this thought process that by getting the fastest items up front, getting them uh, near one another, it's going to produce better outcomes in picking. And that could be true, but it is so dependent on your order profile.
Yep.
And I'll give you a really simple example. If you have two product lines, and in product line A, you have this really fast moving pin, and in product line B, you have this really fast moving stapler. But the stapler and the pin are never ordered together.
Mhm.
You didn't achieve anything, right? You
Mhm.
did By moving them forward, you didn't achieve anything. If instead you got pen and paper, that the paper isn't all that fast moving, but it's always ordered with a pin, Now having them together is super valuable because I've reduced a step operationally, right? So
Yep.
my whole theory and really the basis behind the picking engine on Lully's side is that slotting is really important, but doing it is really hard, and doing
Yep.
it effectively is even harder. So we took the other approach. Instead of trying to slot your inventory to positions within the warehouse, because we know that's a hard problem for you to execute on operationally, because you got to shut the location down, you got to pull the inventory out. It's a big disruption. We
Yep.
said, let's slot the orders to the vehicle. Let's think about it as, hey, these orders have all this commonality. Here's all the places they need to go within the warehouse when you're picking. How do we group them together effectively to give you the benefits of slotting based on your real-time order profile, right? When you think about traditional approaches of slotting, assigning inventory to locations, it's always historically based. Like you can't do it on forecast really effectively. Forecast kind of becomes a guiding light, but getting down to location specifics is almost impossible. And if you're just relying on this assignment to a location, the net benefit that you're going to pick up is just minimized. But if you can look at it through the lens of how do I get the right orders together? How do I make sure I'm minimizing my trips, minimizing my stops, minimizing my distance? On the trip side, on the batching side, that's where the value really lies.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I'm from the operational world, but I do have to admit that it seems as if people can never really fully explain to me in words why something is better, like why we must
Yep.
slot. There's a lot of, well, I did this at company X and it worked there,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm bringing it here and we're going to do it. But if you
Mm-hmm.
really try to challenge them to go deeper, they can. It's one of those concepts, I think, that sounds plausible. I mean, when you
Mm.
describe it, the idea of putting like next to like, and this stuff is in like it sounds plausible, but
Mm-hmm.
no one can ever really prove it. At least not in the operator genre, like not
Yeah.
in the warehouse manager. I mean, you may get deeper with some engineers and some programmers, they may be able to do that, but in most cases the people that are singing the praises of
Execution.
slotting is the manager, and they
Uh-huh.
can't really explain why it's better other than anecdotally it just seems correct and nobody's
Logical.
really challenged them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems logical to in layman's terms,
Yep.
but that's why I like having people like you on the show, because you challenge kind of that status quo. And
Mm-hmm.
as I'm sure that you found, when you do that, it gets people uptight, right? It like ruffles their
Mm-hmm.
feathers. I built my whole career on this concept. This in all the
I've done
facilities
it.
I've ran,
Yeah.
this is what we do.
Yeah.
And
Eh,
and you're like, yes, in general, like in a bubble, it is okay, but it's very dependent on what you have at your site. So if you transition in your career from business one to business two to business three to business four, and you
mhm.
carry on that concept to each one, and you're not reevaluating, is it best based on what the order profile is of this site and everything,
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
you, you could be you could be in the wrong on that. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those deals where I think about it as kind of a curve. Like, how deep down the curve should you go? And what's
yeah,
the value that you get for each incremental step? And beyond, hey, I should slot my A movers here, and they should have this size of location. As you keep going down that curve, it becomes really hard for a person to figure out what the right mathematical answer is. Like the space is just massive to try and chew through. But even once you figure it out, it's the execution standpoint. Like, this to me is, we know we've known for 30 years how to do slotting effectively in an operation. And by slotting, I mean, how do we assign the locations? What we have yet to figure out, what I think everyone has yet to figure out, is once you have this grand plan of item A to location 1, item B to location 2, how do you actually pull it off in the operation? How do you, in a non-disruptive way, how do you shut down the location, change the inventory out, get your waves going again or your releases going again? And how do you do that while you're running, right? It's like you're trying to run 2 sprints at the same time, and it's really hard. I think that as Lully expands offering, solving that niche of the problem will be a thing that we take on. But all the same, it's a ways away, and I think that there's other areas that you can grab better value.
Yeah, and that gets back to your orchestra analogy. I think, like, yeah, this individual instrument is good, but if it's used in the improper way or not integrated into the whole orchestra, it sounds terrible. It doesn't work. Same for slotting. Like, slotting is probably good, but if it's not integrated correctly into the overall operation, it can be a net loss and not a net gain. And you're not going to realize that because you've already tuned your brain to think slotting good no matter what in all cases. And yes, that may be the case. We're not here to bash against slotting. It can't work. We're here to just say there's many other parts, and they all have to work together. So
they have to work together. Yeah.
Throw that out there, because I'm really risking getting some hate mail, Mike, talking about slotting this way.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm kidding.
the whole thought process is, in a ideal world, you would slot every single day. But you can't. That's the truth, is you can't do it. You can't do it for a bunch of reasons, but you can't do it. So that's a big part of the thought process with Lully is, well, we can actually do the order optimization every day, all the time. Like, you can get that benefit, but you don't need to put the man horsepower into it to get the outcome. It's a part of the process. It's a part of the system. You don't spend time thinking about it. It just happens, right? Like, that's the way it's supposed to be, is you have this thing that needs to be done, and it's just geared into the system in such a way that it just happens. That's the dream state for all warehouse management systems, right? Well, we got to go from A to Z, and here are the steps, and it just happens. Like, it's status to status, trigger to trigger. It just encourages the flow.
Yeah, and I think it's fair game to come in and constantly be challenging commonly held assumptions with more data and more information to get a better solution. Like, here's a bad example. Like, when I was a kid growing up, in health class, you would take health class. There was this thing called the food pyramid. You remember that? And the food pyramid told you exactly how much. And so, like, there's this giant thing on the bottom of the food pyramid that was all bread. I mean, you should just be pounding bread all day long. Well, now that's bad. You're not supposed to eat that much bread and that type of carb. But that was such a commonly held belief, and no one challenged it. They just did that. But over time, we learn, man, we really don't need to eat that much bread. We got to mix in that team. I feel like in warehousing, it's the same type thing, to use a very bad food pyramid analogy.
No. I think it's great. If you think about the question should always be, what are we optimizing for? And the food pyramid was a really good example of the original, was a really good example of optimizing for cost at a macro level. Like, that was the actual outcome, not to make it, not to go too deep there. Whereas you as an individual probably actually want to optimize for something else. Like, you're not all that concerned about the macroeconomics of the food supply chain. You're more concerned about your own personal health and gut health and body weight composition. And you're optimizing for a very different thing, right? So I think that's a great analogy to the warehouse of, like, what are you actually trying to optimize for? What's the outcome that you're trying to get at? It's generally an important question to ask.
Yeah. All right. So now, like, shifting gears a little bit, we've been talking a lot about what's happening inside the system, right? What's happening
Mhm.
inside the software and how to optimize and everything in that. Do you like are you is Lully a software provider? Are you coming in to implement a software that is ingrained or bolted on to a current site's WMS, or
Mhm.
are you not doing that? Because I would imagine many people want to know that. There's a lot of IT departments
Yeah.
out there that are sensitive to more bolt-ons and more everything, and it all has to work right. But what does that look like for you? Are you software
Yeah.
or no?
It purely software, and software in a clever way. So we do
I
think of
see.
it as a bolt-on, but we don't actually interface with the end user in any way today. So your picker may have no knowledge that we're actually in place, or that you're leveraging Lolly within the site, because their handheld is going to show them the same things that it's always showed them. Their pick menu options, or their screens, their workflow should not change at all. This is one of the things that we're pretty proud of, is we can deploy without retraining anybody on the floor.
Oh
They
yeah.
don't necessarily need to know that it's even there. And we're designed in such a way intentionally that even if today you were using Lolly and tomorrow you decided you're not going to use the Lolly anymore, uh, nothing should change in the WMS's workflow besides this loop between, some sprock in your system talking to ours, getting data back. You should be able to go back to just flowing orders how you were previously. Um, so you know every time you make a change to this enterprise type system, you're taking on some level of effort, some level of risk, right? That's inherent to the space. But we're trying to be as non-invasive as possible. So yes, you're going to make some modifications, but they shouldn't be earth-shattering, and they shouldn't be
Yeah.
permanent or disruptive necessarily to the architecture of that system.
Yeah, and I think that's always a in any time that I've ever done any type of software implementation in a warehouse setting, that's always a question that the decision maker will have is
Mhm.
once we get very intertwined with this, if it goes bad, how bad is it going to hurt us? Like if we need to come out of this or we need to stop, not to say what's my off ramp or what's my exit strategy, but people
Yeah.
want to know that because they've always heard about. And the truth is, there are instances of WMS implementations out there where operations went to a new WS, they scrapped their old one, they went in, and then it just wasn't working. And then
Yep.
they couldn't come back out of it, and the only way was through, and that brought a whole bunch of pain. So, but it sounds like with Lully, there's really not much risk there at all. You don't even really know you're using it. It sounds like the operators don't. And if you
Yep.
turn it off or you want to stop using it, it doesn't matter. You're still shipping out orders. You're still making your picks. You just not doing it in the most cost effective and efficient way possible. Is that pretty good summary?
That's that's it. Yeah. I mean, we want to sit. Uh, we think about places we can interact with orders. So from the time an order enters the WMS or the system, ERP, whatever it may be, until somebody actually starts picking it, your choice. But we can interface with orders throughout that life cycle.
Mm.
But once they actually are in somebody's hand, it's out of our control. We can't influence it anymore, right? And we don't sit before the WMS in any way. So we don't have pre-visibility. It's really just what's in the pipe right now, all the way up until somebody's starting to work it. And we want to play with the data in that area. Well, humans don't really touch that data a whole lot. It just kind of sits in the
Yep.
background, right? You click buttons to release it, maybe to build a wave, to kick
Yep.
off some other process, but you're not actually executing anything. So we're trying to stay out of that area as much as possible.
Yeah. The conductor is doing that.
The
You're just
conductor is doing
listening
that.
to, yeah, you're just listening to the orchestra make beautiful operational music. You can use that term.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's very, very beautiful. That's very, very beautiful. We're all about beauty here at the Warehouse Underground. That's what I do. All right, so we've kind of danced around this a little bit, but picking, warehouse picking is if you look at the studies out there, if you look at the math, like warehouse picking is always the number one labor spend in any warehouse. Usually, in most cases, there may be some variables or some outliers out there, but in most cases, it's picking. And so that's where all of the emphasis is on. Other than inventory control, WMS systems tout inventory control as one of their benefits, but that is also heavily reliant on the end user. The employees have to have a bigger say in the inventory control. And that's why you have operations that have inventory control teams. In fact, most places have an inventory control because it's not it's not a set and forget with the system. But for picking and being able to optimize picking, every WMS is going to tout to you their way that they do that. And man, there are like pick your thing. Oh, well, we have a beeline, or we do batch picking, or we do pick and pass, or we do pick to carton. I mean, it seems like there's like 100 different ways to pick. And the question that I kind of have is that it is like it seems as if it seems like the market says in order to get that, you have to have these very expensive warehouse management systems, and they have to constantly be upgraded because, oh, by the way, that's what WMS providers do. They give you the out of the box option, and then you upgrade it and you modify it and you modify it and you pay them a little bit more to get the optimum picking. Is that required? I mean, it seems like Lully to me can kind of get you maybe not 100% of the way there, but like 90% of the way there for a fraction of the a cost. I mean, is that a fair statement? Like, where do you come down on WMS being able to be the only way to like optimize performance at picking?
So I'm going to use the curve analogy again, but you can think of, and this is a weird concept, so bear with me. So
that's okay.
Optimization, right?
Yeah.
Optimization is it's not an outcome. It's not a number. It's this big curve, and if 100% is the final answer, the final state, traditionally what we have found is a WMS will get you 15, 20% up that curve. And they'll do it in a semi-automated fashion. You can get up that curve 15 to 20% manually as well, right? And a lot of operations have these heuristics that they apply to try to get that 15 to 20%. And it looks something like, I'm going to pull all my singles out, and then I'm going to order my singles orders by item, and that's going to create some denser picking. And then I'm going to run my 2 lines and my 3 lines. And what I'm trying to figure out by doing that is, how do I get the best commonality and how do I maximize my equipment utilization? Because single line orders are pretty predictable in the space they're going to require. 2 to 3 line orders are pretty predictable. So you're playing this game of, I'm going to get a little bit up the curve by getting similar orders, by best utilizing my equipment. And what we're trying to say is, I don't want you to do that. I know this heuristic has worked great for you historically, but we think that we're getting folks somewhere in the 70 to 80% up that curve. And the number space that you're playing in is so large that you don't know factually if where you are on that curve. But we're going to say, no, with mathematics, we're going to figure out what we believe is truly the most optimal based on the current state, the current conditions. So that may look slightly different than just picking singles and just picking multis. It may look like a hybrid. It may be some trips are just singles, others are hybrid, some are just multis. But we're going to look at when these orders are actually due by, what all their commonality is, your equipment capacity, so how many orders fit or how much inventory fits, whatever your downstream process constraints are. Maybe you're picking into a put wall as an example. We're going to have an understanding of that and what its constraints are. We're going to give you back what we believe is as optimal as we can reasonably give you back a plan to go execute. That should get you, again, 70 or 80% up that curve. So to come back to the original question, the WM isn't not only the only way to optimize it, but I don't even believe that they're actually optimizing it all that well.
Yeah. No, good point. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, that's the whole reason why we're here, right?
That's the stick. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. I mean, to play devil's advocate, there are people out there that will say, and we know that they're out there. Everyone knows that people will say robots and automation is going to make all of this obsolete. It's going to make all of this mute. Not even going to have to worry about that. I mean, where do you come down on it? Because I feel like if you go to a show, and I know you just went to ProMat, so you were there. It's like a robotic show. I mean, everything is an incredible demo. There's robots everywhere, and they look fantastic. Yeah. And if you walked out of there, you would think that the whole warehousing world is all about robots. But my contention is that, not to say that robots are overhyped, because I think that's kind of a bad word. But if you look at the bell curve, it's like driving down the road. The fancy cars and the autonomous driving cars and all this stuff is all in the media and getting hype. But when you drive down the road, 95% of what you see on the road is like a beat up Nissan Maxima or something generic like that. So how do you see that? Because I feel like the robot push is kind of encroaching on your space, and people can say Lully's going to be out of business in a year or 6 months because robots are taking over. Yeah. How do you see that? I mean, do you share my view in that? Do you see it a little bit different? Where do you come down?
So I love automation, and it probably doesn't read that way, but I love automation. My very first gigs in the world were in highly automated facilities. I think it would blow folks away to understand the amount of automation that I've existed in or around, et cetera. Like, I still think it's really cool. But where I've landed is that's actually not right for the vast majority of operations and facilities. And it's not that it could never be done, but the thing that I disagree with, that I think people really miss, is we think about automation as providing flexibility, and it is absolutely the opposite. We think about, and the favorite one to pick on, and I love my AMR people, but you think about all the AMR vendors talking about flexibility and ramping ops, and it's just the opposite. You can't turn on a dime and flip on 2x or 3x more robotics. Or if you look at shelf to person system or robotic sortation, we tout these systems as highly flexible, infinitely flexible, and it's not the truth. A lot of these systems have a grid that they exist within, and adding more robots in could mean, depending on how many robots you have per square foot today, could actually mean, no, I need to take the fence down and I need to add a dozen new ports, and that's going to be highly disruptive operation. I'm not going to just flip that on tomorrow. It's not to say that you can't do it. It's just not going to exist in the way that the marketing material reads. But in terms of will Lully exist or not, frankly, even if the world shifted entirely to robotics, Lully's math still holds true. Robotic systems still have the same problems as the human-driven systems, right?
Yeah.
So it could be, and I love this example, but do you remember the slide puzzles that you played as a kid, where
of course
you had okay. Uh, an ASRS is a big slide puzzle. That's all it is. It's a big, beautiful, complex slide puzzle.
Mm.
But slide puzzles are notoriously hard to solve as they get
Mhm.
really large. Well,
Yeah.
it's fundamentally the same problem that we're solving. It's just with a different end effector, a different apparatus, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not overly concerned about the automation curve because I think that we'll keep doing that optimization part better than it's being done today. But
Yeah.
all the same, I think we're in for a long ride of primarily manual warehouses.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll all see. We'll all find out. We may play this podcast back up 3 years from now and say look at those two jabronis. They didn't know it. So
What
you
were
just
they
never know.
talking
But
about?
yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. So where do you come in, man? I mean, do you go after our big like FCs, your type customer, or is your bread and butter kind of more the traditional warehouse space? Maybe not mom and pop type warehouse, but a small DC. Like who's your ideal customer that you can provide the most
Yeah.
value for?
Yeah. So today, where we give the most value is going to be in ecom type operations or unit level operations. So today, we don't play really strongly in the pallet workflows, we'll say. But
Yeah.
when you start breaking the pallets down, if you get to the case level, we can potentially help you out depending on how you flow and how you work. When you get to the each level, I'm really confident that we can make an impact, and then it becomes a value discussion of are we making enough impact to offset the effort to deploy, right? It As that SKU base increases, as that order line profile increases, that's where we start to see uh, outsized value. So if you think about shoes as a great example, you can see on my LinkedIn, we have a shoe customer today, Waco Shoes. They've been phenomenal, but managing large SKU bases is hard enough, and then figuring out how to pick them effectively uh, is
Mm,
really hard, frankly. Or if the other lever you can pull on is order lines, as you get out of that single line, single unit order base, and you get into 2, 3, 5 line orders, the complexity of figuring out how those should actually be picked increases significantly. So that's another area where we provide great value.
yeah. So when a customer comes to you, when they decide that they want to work with Lully and they
Mhm.
agree and all that, like what happens then? What are the nuts and bolts that occur? What does it look like, taste like, feel like when somebody starts to work with you, with
Yeah.
with Lully? What can they expect?
So we start off building a 3D map of the warehouse. So we need to exchange some type of data here. We need to understand, generally like the CAD layout or a picture, or we've built maps for
Yeah.
people walking through buildings with cell phones.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. That's cool.
but we got to build this kind of 3D understanding of the facility and where things are. And then once we have that, we overlay your operational rules. Where are your one-way aisles and where are your slowdown zones and the things that you want to
Mhm.
keep doing operationally. And then it's just about equipment configuration on our side. So we need to understand, are you using an order picker or are you using a pallet jack or is it a cart? And then how do you use that piece of equipment? Like what are the
Yeah.
operational rules that you're using today? Because we try to, even if those rules are wrong in our eyes, right? Even if we think it's silly and not a thing you should be doing, the first thing that we want to do is just improve you in the way that you're working today, right? So
Mm,
if you're
I got
picking
you.
12 orders at a time, well, it might be the wrong number, but we're still going to try to make you better doing exactly what you're doing today. And
I
then
think
over
that's a good
time,
approach.
we'll try to help you adjust to what we think is the right number or the right mix or whatever it may be. But we want to make it as low of a lift just to get started as possible.
Yeah, I think
Once
I
we have
think that's a
that,
great approach. That's a great approach, man. I love that.
yeah. Once we have the equipment configured, though, we're now ready to rock and roll. Like the deployment from our side is actually done. Now it's just about wiring up. It's about getting your system set up to make an API request to us, getting your system set up to process our data that we give back to you. And the data we give back today is really simple. It looks and feels just like the data that you already have. It's here's a wave, or here's a batch, here's an equipment type assignment, here's how I want you to sequence through the locations, here's all the orders assigned to that trip. It's the language that your system is already using. It's just spelled out a little bit differently, right? We've jumbled the bag, so to speak, and it's the data is not complex. Actually, what you're getting back, it's relatively straightforward.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's a great approach. I mean, you run into enough warehouse people over time, you realize, and I've actually said this on the show before. You might think that when you come into a place and to use a car analogy, they're driving an old Jeep. Well, you think, "Man, I'm about to hand them a Mercedes and they're going to love this. It's a huge upgrade," but they won't. They will hate it. They love their old Jeep. They love that Jeep. They know how to drive it. They know how every little nook and cranny is. And when you give them a new Mercedes, they're just gonna reject it because it's new. And even though it's way bigger, way better, way bigger engine, they know how to maximize that Jeep. And so I think if you come on too strong too early, you're just gonna. But you just let me show you how to make this Jeep a little bit better, right? Like I can make your Jeep
Yeah,
handle a little bit better. I can make it turn a little bit. The death wobble goes away. If you're a cheap person out there like I am, you appreciate that, right? Like all those things, and then over time they can kind of ramp up, and I think that's really critical in
yeah.
warehousing.
It's the it's the it, so to stay with the car analogy, the first thing we're trying to do is a driver mod. It's not a vehicle mod,
I like that.
right?
Nice.
We're trying
Yeah.
to we're trying to help you be a better driver of the
Yeah.
vehicle you have today. And then we may help you understand that, hey, if you swap tires, perhaps you now have a whole new vehicle. You have a whole new
Yeah.
world of capability that wasn't accessible to you before. But the first thing is driver mod, right?
Yep. So you you launched Lully in January, is that correct?
Yep, you
Yeah.
got it.
So what's the early reception been like? I mean, I know you've got some customer testimonials that I've seen
Mhm.
online and some videos and people saying some very good stuff about you as they should. But what's the feedback been?
By and large, it's been really positive. And I mean that through the lens of both customers, but also just people in the industry that we've talked to.
Yeah.
The uptake has actually even surprised me, to be totally honest. The amount of excitement about the approach and the
Yeah.
simplicity, it's the thing that we set out to do. So it feels really good that it's resonating with the market and people are getting excited about it. Um, we have figured out how to hone in more quickly on good customers and not as good customers, right?
Ah,
Um, that's been helpful on our side. Like,
mhm.
how do you get into the first couple conversations and identify if you're going to be a good fit or not? We've gotten better at that. Um, but I think that when we've told people that we think we can double their productivity without mechanization, there is some natural skepticism,
Sure.
as there should be, right? Like, uh, is Mike just another snake oil salesman? Right? That's a totally fair question. Um, but then to be able to back it up with customer testimonials and outcomes and people
Yeah.
willing to go to bat, yeah, it's been phenomenal. Like the market uptake
Yeah.
has been great.
Yeah. Don't take my word for it. Call them up. See,
Yeah,
see what they have to say. Yeah.
yeah.
I think this simplicity is if you tout a solution and like I've talked about this on the show before too.
Mm.
The customers in this space in the warehousing world are never buying any type of functionality. They're not necessarily care about what it looks like or this type of component that it has or this is a great attribute or whatever. They're really just buying a solution. They're always buying a
Mhm.
solution. So if you try to
Mhm.
sell them on how complex this is and how intricate this is, and there's a million lines of code, and look at all this and that, you just never you're going to
Yeah.
lose them. So the simple is best approach. It's certainly in the beginning, and then as they grow over time, like you said, I think a great way is to layer that on um, as you go. At least in the area where you're at, right? Like the where. I mean, if you go into a big Amazon FC as an example,
Sure.
it's not the same thing. They have unlimited resources almost and their own in-house team, but that's just something completely different. But for most of the warehouses and little DCs that are out there, I think that's a I think that's a great approach, man. I mean, I think you're really on to something.
Yeah.
I think you'll get a lot of traction.
Yeah, and it's so as we started early on, my background is in the warehousing world. So one of the things that I've found myself doing is being a bit of a consultant, if you will,
Yeah.
into these operations, because we're already talking. We're talking about your operation. We're talking about how to pull on levers and make things better. Um, and it's been really natural to just kind of veer off the Lully course a bit and focus on
Yep.
whatever other problems they've had. But frankly, it's been a blast. Like when you find that
Yeah.
customer that's excited to go make something better, they're excited to work together, and then they start to see Lully as this just broader resource set, where we're not just another widget in the big scheme of the warehouse, but another resource. That's where
Yep.
it becomes just really fun, frankly.
I love that. I love that, man. So where can people find out more about you? I mean, I know and I've been to your website. It's cool. I know you're at the shows, but where can they find out more and what do you have on the horizon for 2025 and maybe beyond?
Yeah. So you're welcome to check out the website. It's lully.ai. Uh, Also, welcome to just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. So, as
Nice.
Ben alluded to earlier, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I spend more time there than I should, and you are free to engage. I know a lot of people don't always feel comfortable commenting on posts or engaging kind of in the public space, but if you want to chat, shoot me a message. I'm happy to talk with anybody. And if Lully can help you, that's awesome. And if you just want to be a warehouse nerd with me, that's awesome too.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, Mike, man, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for telling us more about Lully. I think it was awesome. I think you got a great product, a great service out there. I speak from experience. I've been in the warehouses, and I know the people and the ops and everything, and I know what it is. And I feel like Lully has a good little niche right there, and
Mhm.
I think you gain a lot of traction. I hope you get much more of that. So
Yeah,
thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Ben.
Yeah, you got it. All right. I'll see you. All right, guys. Well, that concludes today's show. Thanks again to the one and only and the real Mike Meyers of Lully for coming on. He's got a very good product, very good niche. I hope you will reach out to him as the Warehouse Underground goes. Hey, check out the new show that we just released last week called The Tiger Team. It's pretty funny. I think you guys might like that if you are into that whole thing. But you can always sign up for the community. Please do that inside the community, the message boards. We have live events, posting, networking, all sorts of good stuff in there, great content. And I think you guys are going to love it. And so, with that, that concludes today's show. And I will see you next week at the next podcast. Thank you.